Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to talk about the Writer's Workshop, which is my favorite part, or one of my most favorite parts, about teaching playwriting. So, if you've never been in a Writer's Workshop before, you're probably thinking, well, okay, what actually is a Writer's Workshop? So it's pretty straightforward, really. In a creative writing workshop, participants read each other's creative writing and give feedback to one another that will aid in the revision of the work. The aim of workshop is to help each participant create the best possible version of his or her play. There are three basic rotating roles in workshop, and each participant is going to take on each of these roles over the course of the cycle of each set of workshops that we do. So, what are these roles? Well, the first one is pretty straightforward. That's the role of writer. So, writers submit their work to the workshop group before the start of the workshop meeting. The work that's submitted should be work that's in progress, but that has come as far as it can on its own. At the start of workshop, the writer designates readers to read a short passage of their work. During workshop, the writer listens to the discussion but does not speak until the end. Readers. Readers read work beforehand and offer feedback verbally during the workshop discussion and afterwards in writing. Everyone in the group takes on this role except the writer herself. Key reviewers. So, key reviewers are readers who provide writers with in-depth written feedback, which includes an annotated copy of their play. Key reviewers also begin and lead the workshop discussion on a particular play with the help of the workshop facilitator. That's me. Okay, let's talk about the process. What happens before workshop? Well, pretty clearly, writers submit their work. Now, with our workshops, all of the work is due, I should mention, the same day. That does not mean that all of the plays need to be read that doesn't mean that the entire class's plays need to be read before a workshop day. In fact, you'll notice there are no readings on assigned days when we have workshop, and this is because you're expected to prepare for class by reading the work that is going to be up. So writers submit their work, readers make written notes about what works best about each person's play, and they also write down notes about anything that's unclear, contradictory, or anything that they feel, we might want to see a little more of that, or something that feels as though we understand what's going on. Maybe we don't need so much of that particular moment or scene. Readers in general and key reviewers don't really comment on formatting. That's kind of that's really going to be my role as the instructor. So try to keep any constructive criticism that you have to the actual meat of the play, rather than, for example, the use of parentheticals or anything like that. Okay, we want to stick with things that are really important to the work itself. So there's also the key reviewer, and as you probably already have a sense of, the key reviewer is really important because she reads the play that she's assigned carefully. She reads it more than once. The key reviewer composes feedback that's in paragraph form and also annotates the play and returns it to the writer. They also compose an opening question and some follow-up questions to keep the discussion moving. Also, you're going to submit your written feedback to me, the instructor, the day before the workshop. I should make clear that no written feedback is given to the writer before the workshop. Okay, what do writers do besides submit their work? Well, you know by now that you're going to have a passage of your work read, so you need to select that passage, and you need to also have some people in mind to read. You're going to want somebody to read both the roles of the characters, but also designate a person to read the stage directions. Okay, great. So moving on, during workshop, During the actual workshop meeting, one person's work is up for discussion at a time. After the passage is read, right, that you designate, then from that point on, the key reviewer takes the reins and he or she introduces the work to the group, starting with a summary, followed by what they thought worked best about the play. They open the discussion with a question to the group on a craft element of the work. Now, what do we mean by a craft element? Well, the things we've been talking about: plot, character arc, subtext, dialogue, setting, tone, any of those elements of craft. And I know there are some that I haven't mentioned here, but think a little bit about the types of discussions that we have about the assigned work, the assigned plays that we've read from Actors Theater, for example. Okay, so after the discussion is opened up by the discussion facilitator, then readers respond to that specific question. The discussion continues with guidance and follow-up questions from the key reviewer. And sometimes I'll step in and point out something that I'd like the group to talk about. And sometimes but more often, I'll hang back and let the workshop be run by the participants, right? This is a great experience for you all because you get to be in charge of the direction that the discussion takes. Now, at the end of the discussion, and each of our discussions are going to be no longer than 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes tops. But at the end of that discussion, the writer thanks the other participants for their feedback, right? Very important because they worked hard on your play. And they ask any questions that they might have about the reader's response to the play. So if you've got that question in your back pocket, was this theme present? Did you see it? This is what I was going for. Then the time to ask that or to bring that up is briefly and at the end. But we want the plays to be approached fresh by our readers, so that's why you, the writer, don't get the opportunity to qualify, introduce, set up, apologize for the play, right? Okay, so you're going to talk at the end, but not before, writers. Okay, so after workshop, what happens? Well, at this point, the key reviewer is going to give their written feedback and annotated script to the writer via the discussion board. Readers are going to post brief comments and feedback to the writer via the discussion board. And the workshop facilitator, that's me, is also going to give some feedback to you, the writer. I'm experimenting with different ways of doing this. We may do this via voice recordings so that we have kind of almost an asynchronous conversation going on. I'll have more information for you on that later. The writer considers all the feedback and then begins revisions according to her own judgment about how best to take the work to the next level. You're not obliged to take all comments to heart and put them into action. In fact, a lot of times, participants in the group, your readers, will have differing opinions on what's working, what isn't, and it's to you to make the best judgment about what you want to do. You may, based on workshop feedback, go in a different direction now that you know how your play is reading, right? How people are responding to it. You may think, well, okay, this worked, but what I really want to do now that I've seen how this worked is try that. The only thing is that revision is expected. And while you're not required to take everything to heart, and while it is your play, at the end of it, we wouldn't bring the work to workshop unless we wanted to work on it more, right? You see the emphasis on the word work here. And that's what we're doing, but it's joyful work and it's good work.